Welcome to episode 14 of the Truth in the Arena podcast, where we are bringing in sport coaches, performance coaches, and professionals from all around the athletic community and speaking to them about their principles, their values, their leadership interests, and then at some point transitioning the conversation to some of their most interested social positions and political positions to talk a little bit about how leadership actually applies to their lives as a whole. Today, we are happy to have with us Coach Todd Hamer. Coach Hamer has over 20 years of experience at the D1 level in strength and conditioning. He has led large staffs at universities, including the Citadel, Marist, George Mason, Robert Morris, and George Washington. He was a nominee for the 2017 NSCA Strength Coach of the Year and was awarded the Presidential Distinguished Achievement Award that year while at Robert Morris. His writing has been published at numerous websites, including Elite FTS, Men's Fitness, Men's Health, Muscle and Health, and very widely published author and speaker. And in addition, Coach Hamer has also joined the City Council, where he lives in Sewickley, Pennsylvania, so has hands-on experience with putting his leadership skills into the community level. Coach Hamer, thank you very much for joining us today.
Man, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So through the opening episodes, I've talked to the coaches about the intrinsic motivation that gets them going and keeps them out on the field or in the court or in the gym day in and day out. And I know that about 5 or 6 years ago, you wrote an article about the importance of finding and centering your why as a coach. Can you talk a little bit about what that why is for you, how you went through the process of defining that, and then also how that may have changed or evolved over time?
I think you really tied everything together at the end of your question about the evolution of it. When I began in strength and conditioning in the late 90s, I truly believe that it was about making the athlete more powerful, more explosive, more, better athlete. As I grew over time, that grew more into how do I make them a more complete person. And something I tell every single athlete that comes in now, every student I have, every person I train is, I do not judge a fish by its ability to fly. And they always say, some fish can fly. I said, well, yeah, they're fish that get up and out of the water, but that's rare. When you come in the weight room, in the gym, in whatever we're doing, I don't expect perfection from you. I expect improvement. And then I make the joke of, if you took me out to your field, to your court, to your, if you were an art professor, as we were talking off camera beforehand, and said, paint me something, and be like stick figures. I don't know what I'm doing. And you would say, okay, let's make it a little better today. And I always begin with that because I want to make an experience where they know coming in that I love to talk trash. And I'm going to have fun with you. Like, that's the worst rep I've ever received. And I always, if people look at me the first time, like, it's okay. We're going to be better by the end of it. And then I remind them, if you took me out to the baseball field, you would strike me out repeatedly. That's okay. That is your skill. This is what I've done for 25 years. And I'm still not good enough at it. I'm still practicing it, working on it. So I think the why is kind of an empathetic leadership, a servant leadership, and stay with me on this one, a selfish leadership. And I say that because we are selfish creatures, and it makes me feel good to see someone have success. When a person walks through a door, I always remind myself and often remind them, I want you to have the best hour of your day. I want to give you the best experience. I want to have the best story, the best lift, the best high five. I want you to leave uplifted, not torn down, not beaten down. Yeah, you should be fatigued. Yes, you should be tired, but we've built you up. We've made you feel better spiritually, emotionally, physically, whatever. We filled those buckets. So now you can carry that on outside of this weight room, and you've become a better athlete. And once that athlete tried to say to me, I said similar words to him as what I just said. And he said, your job is to make better athletes. Stop worrying about building connections. And I said, if you don't build connections, you can't make better athletes. And honestly, I didn't think he was a great athlete. But I think that's very short-sighted. I can make anyone squat go up. That's easy. Vertical jump, that's a little harder, but still not that hard. But to make a connection, to get someone to trust you so that you can build with them is what you're doing. And again, I call it a little bit selfish because it makes you feel good. You do it. I do it. And you feel good when a kid comes up and says, I never thought I could do that, and hugs you or high fives you. So that's where my why. I want to see people succeed. And I have a 12-year-old son, and that changed everything. You know, you've heard people say, you're the kind of coach I want training my child. And I'm one of the coaches on his mountain bike team. And I always try to take a step back on the youth coaching side because I've coached so much and I don't want to step on toes. But I think about that. Do I want to be the type of coach that parent is? Whether the kid, and I right now work a lot with high school kids. I think moved away from the college setting. And do I want that type of relationship? And I would tell you a quick story. I was at an event in our town. It's this huge, it's like basically a town yard. The entire town goes on stage. And I saw this girls basketball player. It's probably 15, 16 years old that I train. And every time I see her, she flexes. You see her, these string bean arms. It's like, see the muscle Coach Hamer? And I go, no, you don't see them. And she was looking at these necklaces with a woman who you look like, that's mom. They're identical.
Right.
I just walked up. I never met her mother. And I said, I hope if you buy that necklace, it comes with Marist. And mom turns around, face lights up. She goes, Coach Hamer. And I said, yes. She goes, every time someone can't open a pickle jar in the house, we go, Coach Hamer. Got to see Coach Hamer. So I was like, okay, I'll check you again. That made me feel good. It's an ego thing.
Right.
So it's okay to have that selfishness in there because you know you're doing it for the right reasons.
No, I really like that connection between servant leadership and the selfish side of it, because it really does that is the reason why you want to build these people up, is because there is that reward for you that makes you feel good, and it makes you feel like you're doing something valuable with your time in a way that not too many other things compare with. And so it does have that element of it. And you mentioned that, in addition to, yes, you're teaching basics of weightlifting or even more advanced weightlifting or whatever, but really your focus is you creating that more complete person. So as you are looking to create that more complete person and ignoring the athletic director who tells you that it's not important, when you're doing that, what are some of the leadership principles or values or things that you're trying to instill in those athletes to make them more complete as young adults and better ready to tackle their adult lives?
So one thing we do is, and I've done this for years now, we do a virtue of the week. And I'm not gonna lie, I just do a list of virtues and I pick out ones I like. The first virtue this year started with humility. And we talk about why it's important to be humble. So when you come into the room, you must humble yourself to know what you don't know. You must humble. And I remind them, old fish and flying thing. Each of you has something I don't have, and I have something you don't have. We're here today for my strength. So I need you to just, in this room, understand that I'm here to educate you. You're going to teach me something, but when it comes to squat, I promise I can do it. And it's not judging you, because if we went out to the soccer field, you'd know more than me. So when we do that, you can make fun of me. And I always try to make a humanizing experience and tell them a story. And Brian Mann once said to me, you're the best storyteller in the industry. And I said, check plus. I'm good. I can quit now. Brian Mann's a storyteller. And I was at a lacrosse practice one day, and the head coach gives me a ball, and I'm sitting there doing this cradling. I had to count lacrosse. And he goes, hey, lob the ball down the other side of the field. And I said, there's a team in the way. And he goes, no, like over the team. And I was like, no, I mean, there's Sam, there's humans right there. And he said, Hammer, just lob the ball over him. And I was like, guys, heads up. I'm going to try this. And I almost took out 5 guys, and they're laughing. And I think, and the beauty of getting older is you don't mind those humanizing experiences. When you're a young coach, you're trying to show, like, hey, I'm good at things. And when you're a little older, you can say, I'm terrible at lacrosse. I'm quite possibly the worst lacrosse player that ever walked the face of the earth. And I'll show you that. And maybe I'll let you show me a couple things and show them that I too am bad at this. And that's okay. So I think begin with, what are we trying to teach them? So I begin with humility. Ironically, the second virtue I picked was pride. which seem to kind of run, opposites of each other, right?
Mhm.
But I said, if you can't be humble, you can't have pride, because you have pride in your accomplishments. When someone buys a new car and it's $1 billion car, you should be proud of that. When someone restores a car, when they build a car with their own hands, when they do that, that's pride. So I say, if you have humility, you're willing to learn, which then you can build and you can have pride. And so one thing is trying to find ways at the beginning of every lift to take a moment and prepare them mentally, emotionally, spiritually, if you will, for that, to say, here's what we're focused on today. We're going to focus on pride. Be proud of what you did. Last week you were humble about it. This week you're going to be proud of something is better than it was last week. You've improved upon what you've previously known. So I think finding ways to connect all of that, bring it together for the student is really going to make that impact. Because here's the reality. 99.999% of our kids will never make a living off their sport. Just a fact. They are going to go on to their lives. And I began, like I said, I have a lot of stories, and I tell them in 8th grade. I walked into home ec class, and my home ec teacher said, this is the most important class you'll ever take. And now I'm 14-year-old kids said, home ec. Home ec's not important. And she said, if you can't cook, you can't eat. Now, whoa, that's pretty deep. And, of course, students go to restaurants. You'll go broke, and you'll get out of shape and fat and everything else. And I say, I look at what I teach you is the most important class you ever take. If you can't take care of your body, you're not going to live a long, healthy life. Do you want to live a long, healthy life? Then you're going to pay attention and your mobility is going to go. I read Outlive this year, and I thought that did a good job of saying, basically his point was, I forget how he said it, but like, what's your usable lifespan? You can ride your bike, you can walk with your grandkids. If that's 70 years, but you lived to 80, you have 10 years and you couldn't do this. So what's your goal at age 70? And I know that to a 15-year-old kid, doesn't always make sense.
Right.
But trying to get them to think in the long view. I want you to win basketball, soccer, or football, and lacrosse wins. Yet, I also want you to play at the kitchen you said. And that's the balance we have to do. So I think taking that into account when we deal with these kids is really key to everything. And I don't even know if I answered your question.
No, you definitely did. Like, we talked about, again, what are like key qualities that you're trying to instill. And you begin with one of the very most important, like humility. And my favorite baseball quote of all time is that there are two types of baseball players in the world: those who are humble and those who are about to be humbled. And that is like true in so many things in life that, you may think you're riding it, but it's going to come. So you have to have that understanding of how to be humble. And then I really like the corresponding part about pride, which really leads well into my next question, because my next question is going to be how these same core values, how do you demand these out of the political leaders or the social leaders that you follow? And the pride one, I think, is interesting because on one side of the political spectrum, there seems to be a idea that if you eliminate self-respect and shame, you can get ahead. Like, if you just forget about those parts of your life, you can be successful, you can be wealthy, and you can, remain loyal, versus some of these things that you have to be humble, you have to have pride, you have to have some of these other qualities. So lead into that with you.
So I think the first thing is knowing we're all imperfect. I had a former student, and I have my texts and DMs are interesting because I work in a meathead industry. I spent a lot of time around meatheads. And I had a former student ask me, hard question, do you think I'm a racist? Not himself. And my answer was not sure. I said, I believe racism is so ingrained from the founding of this country that every single person I know has to deconstruct it. I think you have to sit on that question. I think you have to sit and think, and I think asking the question is a great start. I remember when I worked at the University of North Carolina, they sent us out to rural schools. And they'd give you a demographics of school you're going to go see. And the first school I went to was 92% African-American, 4% Hispanic, 4% other. I'd never been an other in my life. I'd never been, what was other? I walked in the school and I was the white guy. I was 24, I guess, 23. So right out of school, pretty young guy. And I walk in, I'll be fine, whatever. I grew up in a diverse enough area. But then when I walked to school and I was a white guy, am I uncomfortable? And in my head, I said, am I racist? And I remember going back to hotel, I was saying it. I ran a Holiday Inn Express off of 95 in Middletown, North Carolina. And I sat on that, and it's 20 plus years later. And I still think back today. And I think, am I racist? I think we all have things we need to work through to understand. And with our leaders, I think at times we forget the nuance. And I think a mistake that many people that, like myself, very progressive minded, is we want to say that person is a racist or it's like, well, no, they need help working through this. They've never sat on that question. And how do we find it? So I did answer the question. I don't think the other man liked my answer, but his response was, I forget the exact quote on my quote, but it was something along the lines of, "See, think of racist." I'm like, no, there's a lot of nuance here. I think as a country, and we need to understand. Now, one of the areas I read a lot about and try to understand is the Gullah Geechee culture, like South Carolina, Georgia, and the African American traditions. I've read a lot about it, and it's amazing to me. We were in Charleston not too long ago. There was the guys making the baskets, me, my wife, my son, and I said, "Hey, do you mind if my son sits here and understands this, the basket, how they do that?" And it's amazing. And I said, and we started talking to guys, like, "Yeah, we're Gullah Geechee." I said, "It's awesome. Gullah culture is amazing." I said, "Are you originally of the Gullah Geechee culture?" He said, "Man, I'm from New York City. I'm married into this." He said, "My Uncle John goes over. I don't know what the guy's saying." And I said, "Wow." But the language, the way that Southern culture, you can't remove from that culture, because when you think about barbecue, how is that invented? Barbecue's invented crappy meat had to be made tasty, right? Black eyed peas, collard greens, fried okra, all this wonderful food. I love going to the South. I hate sweet tea, but the rest of it's wonderful. Was developed. So to me, I think understanding that we all, whether it's our leaders, whether it's ourselves, have some work to do as a society. And I use race as an example, but you could use anything. 25 years ago, the average American would have said gay marriage shouldn't be a thing. That changed quickly. That was probably the last big social change we had in a positive way, as I see it. I was asked to officiate a gay wedding. COVID hit, I wasn't able to do it. But, to me, I think as long as we continue to evolve, as long as the books behind you, my bookshelf here, we learn, we read books, we meet new people, have a diverse experience, then as leaders in the community, as leaders ourselves, we can help it and we can all pull each other. Because again, each of us has something, things I don't have, I think no gifts that we put each other. So in leadership, that's what I think we need to look for more, is that ask a question and be open to hear the answer and be humble. So you can grow.
Absolutely. And in our previous conversation before we got rolling here, I mentioned that in my early 20s and 30s, and we're looking at the books, that was where I thought my life was going to take me. I thought life was going to take me into journalism. I thought it was going to take me into being a book reviewer and things like that. And then things change and you end up in different places. And you also mentioned how, having a child changed your perspective. And then that was true for me, where I had a couple of kids who were very, very interested in sports and played multiple sports. And rather than being somebody who complained about their coaches or being somebody who complained about youth sports models, I decided, well, I'll do it the way that I think it ought to be done so that I'm not complaining. And that's also an entry point for some people into the political realm where, all right, there's something that needs to be accomplished and nobody's stepping up to do it. So I'll be the one who steps up and I'm going to take charge of this supervisory position or this council position or whatever the case may be. And you're an example of how that also transpires. So can you talk a little bit about the factors that led you to run for the city council in Sewickley, and then also what the position entails and what are some of the positives that you're hoping to accomplish in your term of service?
So I actually was motivated because I was well read on politics and was engaged in them. I never thought I'd run for anything. And
Mhm.
one of my neighbors had the position I'm in now, and she said, I can't do it anymore. And there was this was during COVID, and there
Mhm.
was early on. A few of our council members did some things I adamantly disagreed with, as far as they were kind of protesting the shutdowns. And I spoke at the council meeting, and my point to them is, if you don't listen to our governors, why should I listen to you? You know, you are our elected leaders. And I knew these people. It was for youth, my kid. And I said, it's not about whether I like you as a person. It's about, if you are asking me to follow your rules and regulations, then you should follow the rules and regulations made above you. There are rules and regulations that we must not do.
Mhm.
We break laws every single day. And I got out because I sped. You know, I ride my bike to train these kids. I'm going to go through stop signs. I promise you, I'm not stopping. We each break the laws that are convenient to us. And that's like society. If we all follow, if someone wrote a book about living a year by the Bible, and you can't. But if you follow every law, you're going to be tied up your whole life. You're never going to accomplish anything. You
Right.
got to pick and choose. You got to say, okay, risk reward. I'm going to speed today. If I get a ticket, I get a ticket. I'm going to park illegal for 5 minutes because it's not worth my time to walk up the radiator or pull the apple. Voila. You might get a ticket, you might not. Your risk. You know, it's a game. But basically, there was some things that I disagreed with. I threw my name in the hat. I ran. I was such an unknown politically that when I showed up for my first meeting, they said, "Who are you?" You know, like our other council people, a couple knew me, but most didn't. Our borough manager, our mayor, like, "Who are you?" It's like, "I'm Todd." They're like, "Oh, that's your seat." Um, and I think it might have been Roosevelt that said something along the lines of, when you're asked to do something, say yes and figure out how to do it. And I think there's a balance between Dunning-Kruger and I actually read an article on confidence and competence. And I
Mhm.
think it's okay to let your confidence slightly outweigh your competence. You don't want to get too far,
Mhm.
but go and push your confidence a little. And I was like, I'm
Right.
in them. And, you know, I sat there at the first meeting and it's like, well, what do I say? What do I do? I get to do Pledge of Allegiance. And then, you know, we're going to go over the monthly reports. Can I get a motion? I'm like, how do I make a motion? Do I make a motion? Do I say yes? Do I say me? Do I say president? You know, and now here we are 4 years later. I actually then ran for a county position to oversee county, which I lost 15,000 to 18,000 votes.
Oh,
I
wow.
got 15,000 votes in the county. I'm just happy 15,000 people voted for me. We did close a gap on that election a little bit from where they'd previously been. And my biggest reason is that our prison in the county or jail uh, is, I want to say, one of the like eighth deadliest in America.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is not, people go in there and they're not necessarily convicted yet. Or even if they are convicted, they shouldn't have a death sentence.
Right.
And to me, human rights is important. And especially when the state is taking over human rights. And that's the big thing with me, is that if I'm looking at human rights, um, I'm mad when a government agency murders somebody. I'm mad when a human murders someone, but
Mhm.
it is an elected government agency. And I'm not saying I'm friends with our police force, but that should be held to the highest of standards, which we have entrusted elected leaders to lead. And when you see a death, whether it's in a prison or jail, whether it's by a police officer, whether it's by an ICE agent, whatever it may be, that is the worst thing I can see. Because those are the people that should be holding us under, you know, I want to care for you and do the best for
Mhm.
you. And so that's really what motivates me. And then, you know, we get on council. I mean, a lot of it's, you know, close a road for a party, build a new T-ball field, get new playground equipment, make sure we have enough salt water for next year. Once a year, we sit down for 6 hours and go over every penny of the budget. What a pain about that is. I hate that day. Like the Saturday morning, we spend our Saturday morning sitting in this chambers. You and I'm a strength coach. I can count members. I'm like, "What? I don't even know what we're seeing anymore." Um, But again, this is where I think that relationship matters. We have a borough manager who I trust. I mean, so much. I put my trust in that. Listen, I see what I see here. Are we good? Yeah. Are we under budget? Are we over, but and that's where I think as strength coaches, the same thing. When we get in a weight room, I don't know everything. I always joke that the smartest strength coach I ever got was Eric Cressy. Eric is really good at what he does. And I was having this conversation one time with him, and I said, Eric, you're like, well, their infraspinatus is tight versus supraspinatus and teres. And I'm like, if I got their front squat better, does that fix a lot of problems? Like, yeah. I was like, I'll just keep doing that. Like, I don't want to be you. I don't need to be you. I need to know front squat better, mobility better, check plus, good, move to the next kid. Eric is Eric because he breaks down that kind of stuff. I don't need to. And we don't all need to. We just need to know who to call and who we trust. And that's where I think the politics of coaching are the same thing. Can you trust someone? If you can, call them, ask the question. Right. Find that expert you can call. Who's in your phone book, you can call and say, hey, is this right? Is this wrong? And I've been very lucky throughout my career to have people that I trust and I know to happen. If I do this, will this occur? More than likely. Okay, cool. That's what I'm doing. I don't need every day information. I'm not that interested. And I know some strength coaches, oh my God, I really care about infraspinatus. I know. I know. My strength don't work. So the long-winded answer to that. Infraspinatus is good.
Absolutely. I really like the way that you tie in competence and confidence, and it's something that we talk about a lot in the coaching realm, that competence breeds confidence, because it's hard to be confident in things that you cannot do. But there's another side of it where if you settle for what you're just merely competent at, then you don't, advance to the next levels, and you have to have enough confidence to kind of lead with your chin and lead with your head and go into that next thing beyond your baseline level of competence. And so that kind of leads into the next question, which is, all right, you've mentioned that you ran for a county seat, and does your sense of competence, now that you started to figure out like your role in the council and a little bit more of the political realm, is there a next progression for you that you're continuing to look towards, and other ways that you're looking to serve at the community or county or even state level?
What I've been learning recently, so something we're working with the community center right now on the project with our police, myself, the police, and the community center. So something I'm adamant about is cycling safety. I'm a cyclist. So I'm on my team. I have a rule. I must climb 120,000 vertical feet per year on a bicycle. So goal I set every year. Last year, hernia surgery almost made me miss it. I still got my 120. So people know me as the cycling advocate in town. Now, we have what's called the Sewickley Community Center. The history is really interesting. Actually, the book right here about it, a 7.5-page book about this. It was originally called the Sewickley Black Community Center. When the YMCA was segregated, the Black community members of Sewickley created their own community center. And so it's a wonderful place. The board are wonderful people. They do great things, and they're always looking for innovative ways to integrate what they do with the community and to celebrate. Because, fun fact, where I live in this valley had more Tuskegee airmen than anywhere else in the West. So about 400 yards from my house, there's a wonderful Tuskegee airman working with it. And one of the quotes is, we helped African Americans hold their head high in America. It's from a Tuskegee airman. America is not perfect in that's just a little bit, but I will hold her hand till she gets better. Something along those lines. And I always like that because I think about coaching. So, but back to the cycling thing. So I'm working now with one of the board members, community center, myself, our police, about creating bike buses for kids to get to school. Because one of my concerns is I think too often in our society, we take the most vulnerable and say, you need to be responsible for your safety and most vulnerable. Bicyclists, why are you not stopping a stop sign? Well, cars, you aren't either. Like, when I mountain bike, I see a signs that say, wear orange so you don't get shot. And I think, or, if you have a gun, don't shoot a bicyclist. I shouldn't have to wear orange. You should see it, the helmet. I don't have antlers. Don't shoot me. How often do we, have you ever seen cities have like flags at crosswalks? You're supposed to like hold a flag while you cross the road so you don't get run over. We always expect the most vulnerable to be responsible for their safety, as opposed to saying to the person with the 4,000-pound GMC F9050, whatever, not to run them over.
Right.
And so I try to find ways within that to work, whether it be, with the bicyclist safety, with the pedestrian safety, with the communities, and saying, who's a vulnerable group? And how can, instead of saying you need to be responsible for your safety, bring them to light and let people see the vulnerable and say, look, these are bicyclists. Let's not run them over. In simple things like we added a stop sign at an intersection that was sorely needed for a stop sign. It was a dangerous intersection. And in 90% of feedback, I had one of them let him leave it. He told me, so never stop there. You're the one who's going to get a ticket, not me. But 90% feedback's been positive. We did that because it's a dangerous intersection, blind curve. It's a straight kind of like speed. There's a lot of different issues that were and blind curve, kids crossing, no crosswalk, all these different things. School was letting out, so we added stop sign. But I think finding your battles that you don't. And I think people are often afraid to get into that. And most battles shouldn't have to be battles. It should be concepts. Hey, here's the problem. Here's a solution. If you're going to give me a problem, give me a solution. Or at least an idea of a solution. Hey, here's a problem. What do you think about this? And it might be a terrible idea, but at least you're thinking. And so I've just found, picking the battles that I think I can help facilitate. I can't win them. I can't fight it. But I'm working right now on the dangerous intersection that I know a lot of kids cross at. And how do we slow traffic down, get some traffic calming measures in there? It's become a passion of mine, how we move traffic and traffic calming measures. It's a dumb thing that most kids in America thinks about with me. But like with road cuts or signage, there's so many ways. And I think it's just so interesting. And it's no different than trying to get this. You just solve, you see a problem. How do I solve it? On athlete A, it's going to be different than athlete B. On road A, it's going to be different than road B. Solve problems.
No, 100%. And as you talk about the coaching profession, and one of the things that within that we constantly speak about leadership, and many of us aren't going to necessarily go the exact same route you have in terms of joining the city council and having that level of impact. But something we all understand is talking to our athletes about important virtues like pride and humility. Something we all understand is the value of picking your battles and choosing what you're going to do. And something we all understand is solving problems. And at the same time, coaches tend not to always be that great at using our voice when it comes to community issues and social issues and political issues. There's a lot of stay in our lane and not use all of the leadership principles that we talk about in the narrow view of our field in the bigger picture of where we live and in our lives. And some of that, I think, comes down to that notion of problem solving. And we want to solve problems. We don't want to complain about them. We don't want to be the armchair quarterback. We don't want to be the person in the stands like barking out, I know how it should be done. But is there a route that you see, a practical way that coaches can use their voices, use their leadership skills, and demand things from their community, state, or national politicians when they're not living up to the principles that they believe in?
Well, I mean, vote first and foremost, but also knowledge is power. Know what's going on. I know there's a problem when I get to a meeting, there's 20 people there. When I get to a meeting, there's no one there, that means smooth sailing. That's part of the problem. One of the things I demanded, and I actually told someone recently, I will agree with our solicitor 95% of the time. But remember this, our solicitors make sure we don't get sued because of community. My job is to protect the residents. And it might be from our community at times. So there may be times I say to the solicitor, I disagree. So one of the problems was transparency. People complaining we weren't transparent. Now we have a wonderful local newspaper that covers us. So we're very lucky. There was actually an article, I forget where it was, about our community and our newspaper coverage. So this would be a local community paper that covers us. I know the reporters, they're wonderful people. They write honest articles. Sometimes I'm like, I wish they would have said that, but that's good. And I'm glad they do it. And I respect the two that come to our meetings very much. But I think know what's going on. You know what rules are being passed. We will quite often debate for 6 months so we enacted a new Airbnb policy. If I have an issue with Airbnbs, we live in this quaint little town, in downtown, beautiful, allowed to walk everywhere, blah, blah. Well, we had a motel, it shut down, we came about 12 new hospices right now. And so we know where to, no lodge. So Airbnbs are out. Well, people said, hold on, I don't want Airbnb. Not my neighborhood. Well, who's like my family? I'm down, they're going to stay in Airbnb. So we had debates about how do we best address these. And so we set some limitations on these. Honestly, more than anything, it's really just red tape. You have to go through a process just so we can assess the situation that's best for them. We want Airbnbs, we want here. We want people to come to town, visit, stay, come to our events that we have and different things. But we also want it to be a community. We want neighbors to know each other. So how do you balance that where I'm not in my backyard NIMBY person. You're also open, you're open to the world, to people coming and visit you. And so we debate this for 6 months, and then we go into a vote, and all these people show up and say, what is this? And we're debating it for 6 months. And to the transparency thing, I fought so that every single one of our meetings is live. You can watch it, and it's stored for 3 months. So what we did is we store all of our data for 3 months. And the reason we only do 3 months is because you have a right to know. And you can contact community and say, what happened in this meeting? We have to go back to minutes. If we have them recorded, we would have to go back years and review every tape you've had. And you just it would bankrupt us. We couldn't do it. So we said 3 months is plenty of time for you to get the inflation. So it basically records over the previous, goes 3 months back. When a new one comes out, it records over the previous one. And honestly, no one ever watches it. We have conversations in the borough. Should we get rid of this? No one watches it. And I said, I don't care if you don't. Well, I prefer people to watch it, but people have the option. And it even came back, why don't we just do it live and not record it? I said, because we have working class people who maybe they're waiting tables at night and they can't watch it 6:30 on the Tuesday. So we should have it available. So if they want to see on Wednesday morning what I said, they have every right to go with it. We should not be afraid of what we're saying. And with political violence in our country, well before even this year, it's been a thing. We've, even as, smaller communities have had threats. And we've had, to say, I don't know, it won't be threatened. And I said, well, that's part of what we signed up to. Now, I don't think we're in my own area where we live. I don't think there ought to be violence in the wood. But if someone says to me, I hate you, I hate the voting, well, I'm sorry you do. And I've on a rare occasion had that. A few people kind of snap and decisions I've made. But you must be transparent. And as a coach, it's the same thing. Like humanizing moments as a coach, you must be transparent. I remember I was warming up a football team one day recently, and I high knees. And we just said high knees, coach. But no, we didn't. We just say high knees last. And it's my bad. I get one screw up, and guys all laugh. They come back. I'm like, our butt kicks. We just did butt kicks, and I get 2 screw ups. I'm this, and they all just laughed again. I'm like, guys, usually, but because we built that relationship, that trust, as we talked about, each other, they know I don't screw up that much on them up. For whatever reason, my mind synapses were connecting,
Right.
And I dropped the ball twice. But to be able to say, my bad, guys, what do we have next? We have white portraits. There it is. As an older coach, you have a little more flexibility. And once you've built that relationship, you have that flexibility. Differently in politics. You have a flexibility. Right. I don't like that decision. But you seem to have our best interests out. I'm still mad at you. It's like, when my wife gets mad at me. I'm mad at you right now, but I know you're not a bad person, Todd.
No. So very, very important points that you make there about how knowledge is power and that every citizen needs to have the ability to know what's going on. And they may not pay attention to every single thing, but they have to have access to that information.
Yep.
So that if they want to be informed, they have a route to do so. And On an older blog that you'd written, there was something that I thought was really interesting where it says, never forget that perception is reality, and never forget that those around you perceive you differently than you perceive yourself, which I think is like a profound thing for online culture, because we have this image of what we believe we're projecting, and everybody gets these tiny bits and pieces of us, and they make these judgments based on this one thing that we tweeted, or this one picture we shared of a family, or one little thing.
Yeah.
And that becomes their version of reality of you. And you may think that I'm this completely different person, which sort of leads into this next question that I usually talk about with each guest, based on your online habits and how you're projecting yourself and what you're projecting to those around you, and also what your media diet is like as a human being, so that you are staying informed, so that you are ideally not consuming unhealthy information or propaganda, ideally not sharing that with other people, who that then becomes the way that they perceive you. So, as a human being, as a coach, as a parent, as a member of your community, what are like some basic media hygiene online habits that you would suggest for people listening?
Blow up your phone. Someone asked me, where do you get most of your information? I said, books. And they're like, what? It's
Yeah.
not up to date. I said, well, take the long view. It's up to date. Take the long view. Um, I drive, my father, who has dementia, I drive 23 miles a day out to his base. I listen to NPR every day, probably not shocking. Catch the BBC updates. I think getting the diversity. I know a lot of people say NPR, they're liberal leaning, whatever. They tend to keep facts. I actually recently, and I've been on our local NPR City Council of different things. I've been interviewed on it, and I actually had disagreement with that reason. And I called the station manager to say, listen, it was a show, but I think your host is out of line with what you're doing. Don't be afraid to call out even people who you support. Like I said, we're all imperfect. But that's what I think the local news is toxic. And I don't say that because I'm putting down people do. I just talked about the people who lied about us. I can't say anything. But the people, when my mother was still alive, I was working in the city, and she texted me and said, there was a shooting in the city today. Are you okay? And I said, well, about 2 million people will pass through the city. That's right today, Mom. I'm okay. 2 million people. 2 million people. I was at a meeting one time. We took it outside, and we heard 13 gunshots. And we weren't in the best neighborhood, not the worst neighborhood. It was fine. It was coffee shops. But there was also, there were some people in the neighborhood as well. So it wasn't the worst place on earth, but at the same time, we're in a city. Things do happen. That I think the news does sensationalize things. It also tells you the bad news. People are shot. Someone's murdered. You hear about someone abusing their dog or their kid, and the world's fucked. Stop the local news. You'll know. And let's be honest here. I live in Pittsburgh. Why they watch this local news? The Steelers win the game overnight. That's what they want, You're going to watch the game. You don't need to use it. The 24-hour news cycles are terrible. In our home, we do subscribe to one app. It's Hulu because my son is a big fan. The Simpsons and what's the other one?
Has to be supported.
Yeah, and Futurama. What's the other one? Futurama. Love Simpsons people. So I'm like, whatever. If that's the worst thing you do, it's fine. So we don't have all those different apps. We can't watch all the different news shows. I think cutting out the noise. Facebook is not a news source. Twitter is not a news source. I heard a thing on NPR recently that said something like 52% of Americans now get their news from TikTok. Not a news source. Is it entertainment? Sure. It's entertaining. It's funny. I've seen it. It's hilarious. So I think balancing, how much news you can consume at once. You don't need all of it because, there's about 8 billion people in the world. I guarantee I can tell you a story that aligns with what you want to believe. That there's 8 billion humans, like some decision made. And I can tell the person on this side of a view, their decision. My son once went and saw me speak when he was under the county council. He had fracking was a big thing in Western Pennsylvania. We had a company that wanted to come take all the water from the stream. It was a very sensitive ecosystem, a beautiful stream, untouched, very, very clean water. And they wanted to remove 1 million gallons, 57. So they were going to charge. And I spoke out against it. And I went to this event, I spoke out against it. And my son said, I agree with you. I'm glad you agree with me. But why do you agree with me? He said, well, you made some good points. I said, but A, did you hear the other side? He's like, no. I said, B, I'm your dad. You have bias. I said, but here's what I didn't say. If we don't pass this, more than likely that company's still going to get credits. And now they're going to ship in water. They're still going to take the water. Now they're going to truck it. How they're trucked. I said, so I'm against them taking it from the stream. I'm also against them shipping it in. I don't have the answer to this. And I think if it was not the biggest battle I had. We did save the stream, but what happened to chicken on the bottom? I don't like that solution. I wish we could sit down with the company and say, okay, we know what happened to that. But people say, are you pro or anti? I'm like, well, I mean, I'm neither. Does it make sense? Was it safe? Let's have the conversation. But we're too divided and too divisive right now to actually sit down and say, let's have the conversation. And I think it's because people watch the local news and they watch the react, react. And then that is the issue. So stop reacting. Stop watching reactive crap.
Right. So heading into the last question, one of the things that you've mentioned is the importance to you of, the basic right for people to come out of places alive when they've been involved, like in prison or whatever. And that, like, to me is, again, like the most basic thing is, when you think of the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, we talk a lot about liberty and the pursuit of happiness. Sometimes we don't always perceive that that's the most basic right. Is everybody has the right to continue to live, and it doesn't matter whether I agree with a word you say, a position you have, any part of your life. You have the right to be alive. Like there's nothing I can say that, and there's no part of me that wants you to not continue to live. And as we think of, like, you also say, sometimes we're too divided to have a conversation. And some of that is because of ways of pitting people against each other and creating division for opportunity. Do you see a way that we can come back to some of those very, very basic shared values as a country so that we all understand that we all have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness together? And something I talk about with each one of the guests is, do you have a definition of patriotism? And does that definition of patriotism include some shared values that you think that the country can come back together around to share that together again?
I once worked with a coach briefly, but he used to take something from everyone, and he said, "Love is accountability. If you love something, you hold it accountable." And I like that because patriotism is accountability. When your country does wrong, you must have the ability to call it out. That being said, I think the problem is someone like myself calls out because you're anti-patriotic. We're just in that human moment right now. We've been in other elements. I mean, it gets looked at, people love to hold MLK out. People love to hold MLK out like, oh, his wonderful, beautiful words, as if he does peace, peace, peace. Then they're not going to, but if they read letters from Birmingham jail, they'd be like, oh, he's a little angrier than I thought.
Yeah.
22 times I'd be in there, whatever. I forget the number of times. But yeah, that guy had a little more heat than people appreciate. And okay, which I like. And did at the time when Martin Luther King was killed, what was it? 25% of Americans agreed with his stances. Nowadays, you can't. Yeah, everyone was. So I think you have to look at again, take a long view and say, 70 years ago, 60, whatever it was, everyone should have approved of Martin Luther King, but it took time. It took time for our culture to go. Much like the game of that. I think building community, having conversations with people. I truly believe one of the problems is cause. I've read a bunch of books on this. Like I talked about how did we move. I mean, I forget the book where they mentioned this study where they said the reason people assign you as pathway, that guys. it happens all the time, right? It's because the car's in it, and it's easy to define that person inside the car's an asshole because you don't see them. Just like on social media, in color things. Then you see them face to face. It's a lot harder to do that. So I created it, but they put a picture of human eyes in the back window. And drivers were more polite to that car. They saw humanity. And I think finding him, I have some rules. I used Amazon jobs. I will not use Amazon only because my old laptop needed a charging port. And no one sold it. And I'm going to buy a new laptop. Time to buy from Amazon. Only time to go to work. I don't use drive-throughs. I want to have a real human know. I want to go in, renders goods and services, and give you cash.
Yeah.
Or hard to say, I prefer cash, but whatever.
Right.
And I think creating those moments, the serendipitous moment of walking down the street and saying, hey, old friend, how are you? And we have gotten this. And I do partially own cars and some because you get in your car, drive, you open your garage, you go in, you don't have that serendipitous moment. It's a neighbor. But you may not agree with both, but at least you can find him. So I think finding ways to find humanity in people, and whether that be walking the store, communicating to them, showing some empathy to someone on the street. My son in his armrest of the car always keeps a couple dollar bills. If we see an unhoused person, he puts the window down. He says, excuse me, and I say, it's going to be ma'am or sir, and I give them respect and deference, give them a dollar and just unlock them. Try to create a moment for that person. Is it going to change the problem? Probably not. But here's the other factor you start to think. Is that extra rep of squats going to change the problem? Probably not. If you did 4 sets of 3 versus 5 sets of 3, guess what? Still lost. It's just real time. If you get that dollar to that person, if you have a you know to feel it, I'll end with the dog Obama's last question. Tells this great story. It's just terrible days. I have them all around. And he goes to this valley. It's running for president in 2008. He shows up and it's like, no one's happy to be there. It's raining. I'm sick. Everything's much good. There's a little voice in the back. Fire it up. I don't know if you ever heard the story. The whole crowd goes, fire it up. And you're ready to go. Ready to go. And he keeps going. It's a little old lady with a big hat, gold teeth. Fire it up. And everybody fired up. He said, all of a sudden, I'm getting fired up. I'm getting ready to go. And he said, I realized this is this local lady that does this at every event. And he said, and she changed that room. She changed things. It changed the room. And it changed the community. It changed the community. Change the city. Change the city. You can change the state. Change the state. You can change the country. You know, you can. And I always think about that. Fire it up. Fire it up. Ready to go. Ready to go. I haven't done it yet. I may try that today. Just, all right, guys, repeat after me. But he said, it was electric, man. I was having a bad day. You know, everything was bad, but man, this one brought the heat. Coaches are great at setting that temperature, right? Why not do it outside the way, outside the track, outside the ice, whatever they're touching.
No, that's fantastic. Just that notion that each little spark, you don't know what is going to be the spark that changes something, but you do know that if nobody tries anything, then nothing does change. So, you know, like every avalanche begins with a pebble, and every collection of voices begins with a first voice. And that's a great story to end on. And very, very much appreciate you taking so much time out of your busy day to come and speak with us today.
Thank you. And I appreciate you because I did, so everyone knows, twice reschedule. And you, well, I'm a bad person.
That's okay.
So thank you for working with me on my schedule.
Absolutely. Thanks a bunch.